Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Go. Okay. All right. Good morning. Good morning, Kettering. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming here in person, coming out on Saturday morning. We thank you so much. Thank you for those who are viewing by live stream or YouTube or whatever platform you're using. We welcome you to Kettering Baptist Church Legacy Center. My name is Lena Stepp. I am the chair of the Health and Wellness Ministry here, and also on the behalf of our senior pastor, Buker Sterling III, and his lovely wife, Carolyn Sterling, we bring you greetings. Well, the Health and Wellness Ministry have for you today an awesome workshop. We're going to talk about domestic violence. Yes, that topic, domestic violence. It is happening, it will happen, and it's continuing to happen, even in the walls of the church. So we have for you today a phenomenal speaker, Ms. Shante Jackson, who's going to tell you all you need to know about domestic violence. Okay. First, I want to start with a scripture. Always got to read my scripture. And it's from the New King James Version, and it's coming from Isaiah 41:10, and it reads as follows. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much, God, for just who you are. We thank you, Father, for your loving kindness. We thank you, Father, that you know where everybody is on the pages of life. You know about those, Lord, who are in an unhealthy situation, is in an abusive relationship. Father, I pray for their protection. I pray that you watch over them. I even pray for the abuser. Lord, I pray that you will open their eyes, let them see that what they're doing is not the right thing, is not the right way to treat a person. So, Lord God, I pray, most importantly, dear Lord, for the speaker of the hour, Ms. Jackson, I pray that you will use her in a mighty way, Father, as she educates us and tell us things that we need to know about domestic violence, that topic that no one wants to talk about. And Lord, more importantly, I pray that at the end of this presentation, that your name will get all the honor, all the glory, and all the praise you so rightly deserve. These things I ask. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. All right. In your few reminders, in your folder, your purple folder, there is an evaluation form. If you could take a minute, fill that out, and place it on the table in the foyer, we greatly appreciate it. Also, there's some water in the foyer. If you want a cold drink of water, help yourself. And at the end of Ms. Jackson's presentation, we are going to take a 20-minute break, 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, and 10 minutes for questions. We will take questions online, and we'll take questions here. I will come to you as long as you keep your mask on, and use my mic for your questions. Okay, all right. With that said, also, Ms. Jackson has some material that's in the foyer, that's on the table. At the end of her presentation, if you would just take a minute and check out some of her material. This is one, and then there's another one. I read this one, it's very good. So just go out and look at it. She's going to also do some book signing, okay? We are very blessed today to have her. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce Ms. Jackson, who's going to do her presentation. Okay, Shante Jackson is a woman who is defying all limitation by exceeding as a single mother, social entrepreneur, author, internet talk show host, and speaker. In an effort to help people to help themselves and others, she uses her background in social and behavioral health to facilitate discussion, to give presentation based on her lived and professional experience. She helps audience to explore their innermost thoughts and the world around them through the process of journaling, positive thinking, self-exploration, life visioning, and striving for success. She holds a master's of public health degree in social and behavioral health from University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and a baccalaureate of arts degree in public relations from Columbia College, Chicago. Shanta is originally from Las Vegas and resides in the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area with her son, Zachary. Okay, ladies, get your paper, get your pen, get ready to learn, and take some notes and learn about domestic violence. So, okay, thank you, Charles. So with that said, again, the mic stand is being placed in the aisle, so if you have a question, you can go to the mic stand and pose your question. So without further ado delay, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Shanta Jackson. Shanta.
Hello, everyone. I think you took my book. Yep, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Shanta Jackson, and as Ms. Stepp mentioned, my purpose in life is to help people to help themselves and others. Thank you to Kettering, and thank you to the Health and Wellness Ministry for having me today, and for being brave and in an effort to serve your congregation and serve others to talk about the topic of domestic violence. And so the theme for today's discussion is True Love Does Not Hurt. Do we have this, if we can put the slides up if you don't mind. Before I get started, I'll let you know just a little bit about me. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, my purpose is to help people to help themselves. My purpose is to help people to help themselves and others. I am originally from Las Vegas. I am a woman with lived experiences. You are a woman with lived experiences. I am resilient. You are resilient. We are resilient. I'll tell you a little bit about my personal story, and throughout me talking about my personal story, my goal is also to inspire you, but also to inform you and to educate you to the best of my ability. And so I'm speaking to individuals who may have experienced domestic violence. I'm speaking to individuals who may be experiencing it now, and I'm also talking to individuals that you may have a loved one or someone in the church that you may care about, or even as a health and wellness ministry, things that you could probably do to help others in this situation. And so, next slide, please. What I'll do is I'll begin by an expression of gratitude. So I work by profession. I am a nonprofit and public health consultant. And I'm 100% self-employed. I'm from Las Vegas. The very last day that I was with my ex-husband, I snuck out of the house. I slept in the bed the night before with my shoes on because I wasn't allowed to leave. And I talk about these in my books. And I never imagined that I would be writing a book about my personal story. And I normally would journal, and I would throw my journals away out of shame, embarrassment, and guilt, and I never wanted anyone to read my journals. And then one day I said, if something ever happened to me, I would want my son to know something about me, and my great-grandchildren and so forth. And then, but then I started reading a little bit in my journal entries, and I found myself talking a lot about love and relationships, and just the things that I talked about, I got embarrassed again. And I had planned on throwing it away like I had done the others. And I and I was reading a personal journal entry to a friend, and he said, you know what, you shouldn't throw that away, you should keep it because you probably can help someone someday. So I wanted to write a book, but I always thought it was going to be professional. And so, because I was going to be a professional speaker and I was going to speak on professional topics, never about myself. And so, so I had this aha epiphany moment when he said, you can help someone someday. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And so that birthed the Journal of a Woman with Lived Experiences. It's a 21-day guided journal. And remember, these journal entries were never written for the public. What I did was, once I decided to write the book, I went back, I used my background in evaluation. That means that I'm able to look at words, and I'm able to come up with and pull themes, like common themes. So that's how the titles were born in the book, the different chapters. And so what I do is I have my coach advisor hat, and I share information about that topic, and then I share my personal journal entry, and then I provide a prompt for the reader and a space for the reader to write. And so that's throughout the book. And one of the things that, and so what I ended up doing was I started planning these different workshops, and I've been pulling topics from my book to have these workshops with different learning objectives. And one of the workshops that I have now is called The Benefits of Gratitude and Positive Affirmations, and how it impacts our spiritual and mental well-being, but also how it impacts all the other areas of our lives which are not independent of each other. And so this is, I introduced this in my second book, The Resilience of a Woman. I talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. And in my workshops, we do an assessment of those different areas in our lives. Again, we start off talking about our spiritual and mental health, but how it impacts the other areas and vice versa. Because sometimes we focus so much, like we may be good spiritually, we may be good financially and occupational, but what about environment? What about our social? What about our relationships with our family? Intellectually, different things like that. And so with that said, there are benefits to gratitude, and so gratitude opens the door for more relationships. It improves our physical health, our psychological health. It enhances empathy and reduces aggression. Gratitude, grateful people sleep better. Gratitude improves self-esteem, and gratitude increases mental strength. Additionally, I like to believe that gratitude also produces spiritual benefits, such as continued blessings from God. Express gratitude, and the universe will return it to you. God will return it to you. So before I begin to talk about our serious topic of domestic violence, I first want to start by reading my 3rd journal entry, which is an expression of gratitude. So I'm on page 18. Shanta's 3rd journal entry, Expressions of Gratitude. God is good to me. I'm grateful for God's guidance, visions, messages, and protection. I'm grateful that I'm able to provide for myself and for the resources available to me. I'm grateful that I am able to understand, access, and use the resources available to me. I'm grateful for my knowledge, insight, and wisdom. I'm grateful that my mistakes have not ruined me. I'm grateful for God's forgiveness, mercy, and grace. I'm grateful for my son and my family. I'm grateful for my future family. I'm grateful to my ancestors and my descendants. I'm grateful for another day of progress. I'm grateful for growth, peace, and sanity. I'm grateful for my mind and positivity. I ask that God remove negativity and negative and toxic people from my life. May I have the wisdom to recognize these people and the courage to be okay with removing them from my life and keeping them at a distance. May I not judge people or be too hard on others or myself. I pray for unconditional love, unconditional internal love, unconditional love from my soulmate, the person who God has gifted me with to fulfill my destiny. I'm grateful for the man who compliments me and my purpose in life. I pray for spiritual health. As long as I have spiritual health, I have my mental and physical health, because my spirit is just that amazing. I'm grateful. Amen. Right? And so again, I provide a prompt for you and space for you to write in the book as well. And so with that said, again, I'm grateful to be here. And as I mentioned, the theme of today's conversation is True Love Does Not Hurt. And I didn't realize this until I was just reading that, but even that expression of gratitude, it kind of aligns. And so that, like I mentioned, there's love and there's unconditional love, but there's that internal love that we have to have for ourselves too. So next slide. Could anyone tell me, in your opinion, why we need to talk about domestic violence? Yes? Here. I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had. I guess you got to come up to the mic. I was trying to walk around. I'm sorry. My apologies for that. Yeah, so again, for everyone watching on YouTube and Facebook and online, thank you so much. Please do enter your questions and comments in the chat, and we will read them. And if you have a response to why we need to talk about domestic violence, please do enter that in the chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention it's important because it touches so many people in our life. People that we may not realize in your family, close friends, and it's all walks of life. It affects everyone. That's why I think it's important to talk about it and to bring out all the different aspects that lead to why we have domestic violence and the strategies and resources to help people enduring that. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. And it is October. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And the more informed we keep ourselves and others, the more prepared we will be to recognize and stop abuse when it happens. And domestic violence can have an impact, a lifelong impact on a person's life, even opportunity or their well-being. Okay. Also, just so you know, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is also important because it connects people who are actually in the field, who are advocates, who actually want to help. It helps us to connect with each other, just like as we're doing in this moment. And also, as you mentioned, it helps to raise awareness and to let people know that they're not alone. And so before we go on to talk about the different names or what we know about domestic violence, I'd like to share a little bit about my personal story. And so there is power in storytelling. And the reason why I choose to share my story is because it can help someone else. And if I could do it, and if I could leave that situation, so can you. Also, just by me telling my story, it's therapeutic for myself as well, and I realized a lot of different things about myself. And I actually suppressed a lot of my feelings and my emotions, and not until I started journaling is when I started to realize like the impact and how it had on just dating, and I was like subconsciously choosing men who were emotionally unavailable because subconsciously I was really afraid to be vulnerable and commit. So I learned a lot of things about myself through the process of journaling. A lot of therapists, mental health professionals, coaches, they recommend journaling as a tool, but it doesn't replace therapy. So if anyone feels like they're not able to move on or get through or kind of process their experiences, I definitely recommend finding a trusted therapist. And just know that based off of experiences from friends and what I've read, sometimes it takes, you have to find the right hairstylist, you have to find the right barber, you got to find the right therapist too. So just keep that in mind. So just in case, give it a chance. And if that person, it doesn't work out with that person, and then maybe find someone else that fits you. Okay, and so page 2, Shanta's first journal entry, owning her story, the power of storytelling. I'll just read a little bit, then I'll tell you a little bit about the story. But for a long time, I suppressed, almost forgot my memories and past. Those same memories and past that are a testament to my strength, the same memories and past that molded me into the person I am today, the same memories and past that helped me to understand, motivate, and help others. They are the same memories and past that helped me to know and understand myself. When I was 19, I was in Chicago, undergrad, second semester, freshman year, and I met a boyfriend. And my boyfriend, he was 25 years old, I was 19, and he had 5 children. And we were married when I was 21. So I was 21 years old, I was married with 5 stepchildren, and I was still in college, undergrad. And he was the nicest person to me and the meanest person to me at the same time. And the third time that I left him, I talk about the third and fourth time that I left him in my first book. And my second book, I talk about the first and second time. But the third time that I left him, we were in a road trip. We were on a road trip. It was his grandmother's, I think it was like her 93rd birthday. And my son was 11 months old. And within a few weeks, with 2 weeks away, he would have been turning 1. So I coincidentally had a plane ticket to go to Las Vegas, my hometown, to have his first birthday party. And so while we were in Atlanta on that trip, he hit me. He hit me while I was holding my son, and there was a wall behind me. And he was on the phone with his mother. So this is how, so we talk about family members. So I have a son. This is not acceptable in my household for my son to be controlling, abusive, or to have unhealthy relationships or be toxic. And these are things I talk to him about. But we have to understand that just as family members, sometimes we're like aiding and abetting these situations as well. And it's just being honest, right? So he's on the phone with his mother, and he hits me. And so that happened. Now we're driving from Atlanta back to Chicago. I have my 2 bonus daughters in the car. His mother is driving, and he's a passenger. We stop at a gas station, and I'm in the back with the kids. And so I figure, we're adults, we're a team, we can take turns. So now I want to sit in the front seat. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'll sit in the front. I tell his mom. And then he sees me, and he shoos me like I'm a dog, like a little kid. Like, what are you doing? Get in the back. Like shoos me. And so, mind you, he had already hit me. And he left me, we were in Atlanta kind of like in a rural area, a rural suburban, kind of just like this. So I don't know anyone there. I can't walk out and be downtown somewhere. So I was left alone at his uncle's house as well. And so just all of that kind of built up. And so when he did that shoe, that was a trigger for me. And I said, you know what? It wasn't a nice word that I said, but I said, F you. Like, I'm done. But that for me to be able to say that was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. So we arrived to Chicago, to his mother's house. He's talking to me so bad that his mother and his daughters are crying. Everyone's crying except for myself and my son. And my mother, I'm on the phone with my mother, and she hears the way he's talking to me. So I just imagine how a mother would feel. And so she's telling me, Shanta, just be quiet, just don't say anything, just don't say anything. I had $200 that I hid, $200 cash that I hid in my sunglass case. He thought that he had took all my money from me. So he was like, where are you going to go? You don't have any money. He literally chased me around his mother's house and outside. I would not get in the car with him. Those Lifetime movies? And that's your intuition. And remember, your intuition is God. I knew. So he had put his hands on me before, but he had never, and he had threatened me. He was controlling different things. But I knew that day it would have been something different. And I was afraid that if I would have gotten in the car with him, that we would have not made it to our destination, that we would have been in a car accident, anything. Like, I just knew whatever it was going to be bad. And so I refused to get in the car with him. I convinced his mother to drop me off at the airport. Remember, I coincidentally had a plane ticket to go to Las Vegas to plan my son's party. And that's how I went home. So mind you, I didn't plan, this wasn't planned. So I have a home. I have, just like you have at home, you have your tax records, your social security cards, your passports, you have your birth certificates, your baby's pictures, you have your jewelry, you have your clothing, everything that you have. Imagine right now, today, never going back to your home. And so that's what I did. I went to Las Vegas with my baby, and I showed up to my parents with 3 pairs of dirty clothes from the road trip, $200, the sunglass case, and my baby in his car seat. That's how I showed up, but that was the 3rd time that I left him. The 4th time, so he ended up coming to Las Vegas, and we do this sometimes. Sometimes we go back to, different situations because I did love him, and I did want to, have a family and to make it work. And so the very last day that we were together, we had a disagreement, and my family, so this time I have family because I'm home, I'm in Las Vegas. So I said, and he never hit me in Las Vegas. And so, because my family was there, so the isolation and, and the control and the power that he had in Chicago, he doesn't really have that here. But so he's not physically hitting me. So now he's using his control, and he's verbally abusing me, saying different things. And so I said I would like to go to my mother's house. He said, "You're not going anywhere in my car," because everything that I had, of course, was because of him. "You're not going anywhere with my car." And I said, "Okay, I'll walk." I never told him that I had a friend who lived by within walking distance, and my plan was to go to her house. And he says, "You're not going anywhere with my son." So that was his first time using my son against me. And so I went in the house, and I slept in the bed with my shoes on. The next day he went somewhere, I don't know where he went, and I snuck out of the house. And again, I didn't pack. I was a loan officer at the time, so I just grabbed my business cards and my laptop. And literally 2 weeks later, I found a condo, and I moved on with the rest of my life. And I never went back. So never, that was it. I just never went back. And of course, the abuse continued in different type of ways with control and then financial, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But that's a little bit of my, my story. And then like I mentioned before, I kind of forgot about that until I started writing it and started to talk about it. And and when you talk about it, you start remembering different things. But that impacted me. That impacted me emotionally, just kind of my self-esteem. And the reason I choose to tell this story is because when I'm writing in my journals and my topics, I'm talking about love, relationships, dating, I'm talking about certain things. So at least you can understand like where I come from and why I may think the way that I think. Okay? So what do we know about domestic violence? Domestic violence has different names, and just so you know, language, it does matter. So domestic violence, for the purpose of this conversation, I'm talking about intimate partner violence. So the person that you are married to or the person that you're dating or in a relationship with. But domestic violence, think about kind of like residence. So if an officer is called out to a scene of domestic violence, it could include a sibling, it could include mom, dad, it could include mother, father, cousin. So domestic violence is all encompassing. Just so you know, like if you hear different terms or if you're reading different statistics, and so if you want to understand, like, okay, when they say domestic violence, are they referring to this? So you can be more inquisitive when people start giving you statistics and different things like that. And then another term used for domestic violence is domestic abuse. And then I mentioned again, intimate partner violence. So when someone says intimate partner violence, again, when I'm speaking about domestic violence for the purpose of this conversation, I'm talking about intimate partner violence. I'm using them interchangeably, and a lot of people do. But when you hear the term intimate partner violence, just know that they're specifically speaking about people who are in an intimate relationship with each other. And then you may hear the term dating violence. And dating violence usually refers to adolescents, like teenagers, younger people, when you say dating violence. And as Ms. Stepp mentioned during the introduction, domestic violence is happening everywhere. It's not just a married couple. It's not someone older. Our young people, our teenagers within our schools are experiencing this. And so I think it's important for us to find teachable moments. My mother, I think she assumed, I'm so smart. I'm smart. I have a little brother. I'm 13 years older than him, or 12 and a half years older than him. He's a little bit more dependent than I am. I'm very independent, very smart. And for my mother and father, it's certain things that they didn't talk to me about. My mom actually worked for an OBGYN ever since I was 12 years old. And it's just certain things that she didn't talk to me about. And I don't know if it's because her mother didn't talk to her about it, but now that I think about it, I didn't have any aunts or cousins. And so we're kind of like learning things on our own. And I was always, I would like to find information. So I learned about certain things just about my body, just about relationships, by reading and through experience. And so I say that to say, some of us may feel uncomfortable with talking about relationships and dating and setting boundaries. But I think it's important for us to talk to our young people and to see what's kind of going on and not assume anything, because it could be our child that's being abused and it could be our child that's being the abuser. It could be, just to kind of be aware of that and to have those different kind of conversations. And even if it's, so there's always age-appropriate conversations as well. So, for example, let's say your children are 5 and 7 years old. Maybe the conversation can be about bullying. It doesn't, it could be about bullying and different scenarios. What's happening on the playground? So, for example, little Joe keeps hitting me at school, and what do we normally? And in the past, what does that mean? Hit him back. But in a lot of households and a lot of communities and cultures, this is like, oh, he just likes you. He's just hating you. He's just out doing that because he likes you. But do you understand that this is a child? Think about child development and think about the conditioning think about the underlying, it's not intentional, but think about the underlying message that we are saying, right? So there needs to be a conversation with the teacher about little Joe. So that little Joe's parents can know that he's hitting a person, right? And then with your child, like, no, that's not acceptable, and that's not a friend. Friends don't hit friends. So it's already making it acceptable. Oh, he just did it this one time, and then whenever he gets mad, or, So it could be something as simple as that. Or let's say now junior high school, and your child or your niece or grandchild is dating someone, and they are in sports, so they have these certain activities that they have. And it might not even be dating, it could just be a friendship. So now all of a sudden they're not, they feel kind of a little pressure to make a decision about the activities that they're doing in school. So now it's not, they were doing this every Thursday after school, and now in order to maintain the relationship, whether it's a friendship or a dating relationship with this person, now they feel as if they have to leave that or not go on Thursdays anymore. And these are things that we should be, you kind of be aware of, or again, these are like just examples or teachable moments or things to talk about, right? Okay. Also, when it comes to language and different names, you have victim and survivor. So just so you know, last week I interviewed a woman, and I asked her, in her opinion, what was the difference between victim and survivor. And she was saying, she was a victim, and now she's a survivor. So it was a very empowering statement. But legally speaking, victim it's a legal term, and so twofold. So when you think about the legal side of it, it's a legal term that is used in court proceedings. The victim, okay, and then as it relates to survivor. I could reference myself as a victim of domestic violence, but it's more empowering. So survivor is a more empowering word, and so that's why you hear a lot of people refer to themselves as survivor. I personally like to describe myself as a person who has experienced domestic violence, personally for me. Okay, so the next slide, and just for definition purposes, so the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, they define domestic violence as the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or other abusive behavior as part of a systemic pattern of power and control by one intimate partner against another. And one thing to recognize about domestic violence is that the frequency and severity, it can vary dramatically. I actually was afraid, or not really afraid, I kind of diminished or downplayed my experience with domestic violence because it wasn't that bad compared to what other people experienced. And I don't want to be, sometimes this has nothing to do with domestic violence, but, just as women, you could be accomplished in whatever it is that you choose to do, and you could be working out, taking care of yourself, So you're proud of your skin and what's the changes that are happening in your body, but it's just like kind of like don't boast and brag, and then this is vanity or this is that. So some things it's just kind of like, you know what, I don't want to take the attention away from someone else or bring attention to myself, because that's just not right. So I won't talk too much about my story, and just different reasons that play out in my mind. However, the woman that I interviewed last week, her name is Renee Michelle. I met her through a private domestic violence support group. It's this woman by the name of Elois Kelly, and she hosts this support group, and she has different speakers. And that's how I originally met Renee Michelle. And so Renee, her story, she was sexually abused as early as age 5 by different family members, and she was raped as well, more than once, by outside people, not family. And she met this guy, and this guy was going to save her. And so so people have sometimes, they are familiar with trauma. So when things kind of happen, like it's kind of sometimes is normalized. And she also mentioned that she grew up watching her father abuse her mother. And so he was Prince Charming, and that's usually how it happens. No one just comes out abusive from the very beginning. So he's Prince Charming. She falls in love with him, and he ended up like playing Russian roulette with her. The very last day that she snuck out, and but to this day she has seizures. And so it can have like I mentioned, domestic violence, it can have long-term impacts. But when she was telling her story, I hadn't experienced anything like that. But when she was telling her story, I said, you know what? It's important I know I made the right decisions. For one, it affirmed to me that I knew I made the right decision, because I could be a lot of things. A lot of things could have happened to me. I could have hit my head on a countertop. I could have been choked. His hands are bigger than mine. A bone could have cracked. Anything could have happened to me. Honestly, I think if I would have stayed in that relationship, I would not be here. And I do not use tobacco. I don't smoke cigarettes or anything like that. But I honestly think that that's the type of lifestyle. Like I would have, just kind of find other ways to kind of cope in my self-esteem and like all of my potential that I have in myself. I would just, probably not have a good relationship with my family, because I would be embarrassed about my experience and now about my appearance, because, I could just think, not to say I wouldn't get out of it, but, I wouldn't be the same. But her telling her story, it helped me to realize that I made the right decision to leave, and I should tell my story, because there's someone who's experiencing it now. And especially, and we'll talk about this more in the presentation, but leaving an abuser can be the most dangerous time for a woman. And but that wasn't my case. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a safety plan or planning to leave. I kind of thought about a few things before. Like I said, I had left 4 times, so the 4th time was the final time. But I didn't have a plan or anything. But I share my story again because I can probably help someone else. Then I can show people, if I can do it again, so can you, right? And bring awareness to it. So the different types of abuse. I'm on the next slide. So we have physical abuse. We have psychological abuse, which impacts our emotional and mental well-being. There is sexual abuse. Yes, someone that you are in an intimate relationship with, even if you do have a sexual relationship with that person, can still sexually assault you, even if it is your husband. We have technological abuse. We have financial abuse. And then even against someone's immigration status, they may threaten them with their paperwork or threaten for them not to be able to see their family, and the person doesn't really understand the rules and the laws of the country, different things like that. One of my stories with financial abuse was we have my ex-husband and I, my son. My son is 18 now. And he would do things like not pay child support. One day I met him. I was supposed to be at this day-long professional development seminar. I was working, my family has a family business in Las Vegas, so I was working for my family business, and my dad sent me to the professional development seminar. And I met him, and he had his dad in the car with him, and his dad is deceased. But at the time he was living in Atlanta. And he says, well, can you put Zach, that's my son's name, put Zach in the car. So I leave we're parked side by side. I leave my car, get out of my car, and I'm in the back passenger side, buckling Zach in, and I look up, and his dad is in the driver's seat of his car, and he's in the driver's seat of my car. We're divorced. In my logical mind, you know, we can co-parent, and I had to go somewhere for the day. He's his father. I don't think that he will harm my child. So at this time, my son's probably, he's not quite 2 yet. He's about 1.5. And I jump in the car. No. We were at this McDonald's and payphones. It was still one of the last payphones in the city. So I tried to dial 911, and I can't remember if it was him or his dad came and hung up the phone. And so now I got to make a choice. I'm not getting in the car with him. So I get in the driver's seat, and the passenger seat of his car, and again his dad is in the driver's seat. And so then I'm like, oh, these phones, I'm gonna call 911 and put the phone on the floor, and they're gonna find me. That didn't work. We ended up kind of scuffling. This is me and his dad scuffling for the phone, and his dad looked at me and he said, I'm just here to make sure that my son does not do something that is going to put him in prison for the rest of his life. And so, mind you, we are divorced. I couldn't leave him, and so this may be common, and if you have experienced this as well. And just remember that not all unhealthy relationships and not all controlling people, control is a form of abuse, but not all unhealthy relationships are abusive, right? And so you may have heard this before, the only reason you're leaving me, it has to be somebody else. Right? And remember, he told me that I couldn't leave without his car. So everything that I have in his mind is because of him. So he's going to take from me. We did we did have a property in Chicago, and I went to Chicago I sold the property. I sold it to one of his family members. And I remember at the closing table, mind you, it was in my name, and on purpose, he did not pay the mortgage. So now my credit is low. This is on purpose. I'm talking about this because I'm talking about financial abuse. And I mentioned that I'll share a little bit of my stories as well. So the financial abuse. I said, so at this time we're probably around 2006, I think. And I might get my timeline kind of mixed up with my stories. But we were in Chicago for the closing. And properties were sky high at the time, and the interest rates were high. And we were in Nevada. People were moving from California. They're used to paying these crazy mortgages, so they're coming to Las Vegas. They're selling their houses in California. They're coming to Las Vegas. They're buying cash. And so the average person can't afford anything. So I remember at the closing table, it was like about $14,000. That was all I was going to get, but it was like about at least $200,000 on the table. And mind you, it was in my name. So I had the right to do what I wanted to do with the property, but still the fear of the control, like I was too afraid to sell it or do anything because I was afraid that he would do something, he would retaliate against me. And at the closing table, he was holding my son, and I said, hey, $14,000 is not enough money for us to be able to put a down payment on a house. And he said, that's not my problem. And I said, you know what, give me my son. So the same day, I leave, I go to the airport, and then I ended up taking maybe like an extra $10,000 or $12,000 or something like that. I was still scared to take a lot. I took a little bit, but I was still scared. And so that was the money that I had in the bank. And coincidentally, at that time and so mind you, I had to start from scratch. So I have a condo that I'm renting. I have no furniture or anything, so I'm using money to get myself started and to pay bills and different things. So at this time, I had about $12,000. I had half of it in savings and half of it in checking. And so that Chicago incident with the closing happened first. And so we're back in front of that McDonald's. His dad says that to me. And then he says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to the bank, and you're going to give me all of my money. So he was that mad over that. So we're driving around, and I can't think. It's a credit union. It's early in the morning. The bank doesn't open until 9. It's not even 9 a.m. yet. So no one in my family would even, I remember I'm supposed to be at a seminar, so no one would know that I'm missing. My son, and so I'm in the car with my son, and I'm telling him maybe the bank is here, maybe I can't think, and so we're going to different banks, and he's in the meantime I had some clothes from the dry cleaner. He's throwing the stuff out he's driving down the highway, I'm down the street, and he's just throwing my stuff out the window, my credit cards, my sunglasses, whatever I had in my car, everything except for my ID, because I needed my ID to go to the bank. And so we get to the bank. His dad is in the car. So now I feel like my son is being held for ransom. His father already told me that I'm here to make sure that my son doesn't do anything to put himself in jail for the rest of his life, or prison for the rest of his life. And so even though there's no gun held against and I say this because I want us to have empathy for people that are going through certain situations. Like, why would you go through that? Why didn't you just do this? When you're in the situation, first of all, you're a mother. So the first thing I'm thinking about is my son. And so of course, the first opportunity that I'm going to get away, but I can't get away. Remember my phone? I don't have my phone. So I go into the bank, and he's literally right next to me, and I look at the teller, and I say, I would like to take all of my money out of, and I say the account number, and then I say checking. And I'm like, okay, she's going to have some training, and I'm the 911 on the phone didn't work. I'm like, okay, she's going to have some training, and I'm just like, you don't see that I'm being intimidated? Like, who comes up to the bank? Come on, who comes up and with a man and says the account number, and then I emphasize checking. So she knew, because she didn't say which account. Matter of fact, I said it was like a suffix. It was a suffix for checking. So she knew that something was, but she didn't act. It wasn't like excuse me, can we take you in the back? Or we have a policy, since you're taking all the money out of the account, that we have to do this. Like nothing, And so he was satisfied because he thought that he had took all of the money from me, And just like over the years, just the inconsistency with child support, even to this day, like I never enforced child support. I never took him to court. I know that's my right. Some things is just kind of like, you know what, I'd rather just keep him, like not deal with him, and I'll figure it out myself. And if he wants to do something, great. If he sends something, great. If not, So anyway, financial abuse. So that's my story with financial abuse. And so people can, even if you're in a relationship, they can withhold money from you. Or I've heard stories of women only having enough money just to feed their children and not themselves, and the abuser was doing that intentionally. So financial abuse is another form of abuse as well. Okay? And so what else do we know about domestic violence? I'm on the next slide. On average, more than 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men. So it's more than 3 of us in here, right, in this room, in the U.S. will experience rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner. In Maryland, in 2019, I'm on the next slide, 20 people were killed by intimate partners, and an additional 3 bystanders were killed, and 69% of these deaths were caused by a firearm. And so something that, like I said, we'll talk about things that we could do, but as far as like advocacy, there may be an opportunity for all of us as individuals. Every year there's the legislative session here in Maryland, and there are certain laws that come up, amendments to certain laws, and a lot of them have to do with domestic violence. And so I think that's an opportunity as well to advocate on behalf of domestic violence victims, to say, you know, as the health and wellness ministry, or, you know, as a body of the church, this is our stance on this, and to, you know, communicate that with our elected officials. So that's one thing to know. Firearm, there was one incident, again, the intuition, God protected me, and so we were in Las Vegas. We were at my mother's house. No one was there. My mother has a 2-story home. My car was parked in the garage. And in the garage, up top, he had a gun that was there. And I was telling him that, again, one of the most dangerous times is leaving, right? I was telling how he ended up coming to Las Vegas. We had a phone conversation, and I said, you know what? Well, maybe one day we can go to dinner or something. Maybe you can fly in, because we were trying to reconcile when I first came back to Las Vegas. And I said, well, maybe we can go to dinner or something. And one day, and I was staying with my mom at the time. So one day I was sleeping, and I woke up, and I opened my eyes, and he was standing over me. And I said, oh, this man's crazy. That's what I said to myself, but what came out of my mouth was, oh, hey. And he had on all black. So remember, I can't leave him. So when we're doing that whole bank run, he's like, so tell me who he is, and who is this guy, who is this? Mind you, we're divorced. And so, of course, I can't be leaving him because he doesn't treat me right, and we're not good for each other. That's not why I'm leaving him. It had to be somebody else. So when he showed up, and I saw him standing, and I saw him in that all black, I said, he was waiting to catch me. And that all black, he was going to hurt me and or that other person. And so anyway, that's how he ends up getting to Las Vegas, and we're at my mom's house, and so at this point, I'm just like, look, it's not gonna work. We can't be together. And this man is literally on his knees crying. I'm talking about crying and sobbing like a baby, snot coming out his nose, begging me not to leave. And I said, hey, like, come on, look at yourself, get up. Like, this is not cool. But I knew, I wanted to leave, but I thought ahead. Again, those Lifetime movies. I thought ahead, and I'm like, there is no way that I'm going to be able to open the door, push the button for the garage to get up, start my car, and reverse and leave without him. If he's in this state, I didn't want to remind him. He wasn't thinking about that, but I was thinking ahead. And so I was like, I do not want to remind him that gun is there, because the last thing I want to do is for my mom to come home and find me deceased. And I said, and after he shot me, whether he was emotional or not, whether he meant to or not, right? After he did that, I could see like him shooting himself. So it would be a murder-suicide, you know? So I just thought about that because of the firearm incident. And so again, just sharing a little bit of my situations. Again, when I say God is with me, God has always protected me and always guided me. Like, a lot of things could have happened to me. And I never imagined that I would be here today sharing this story, especially publicly. Next slide. On one day in 2019, 81% of Maryland domestic violence programs served 702 survivors and their children. And another 135 requests for services went unmet due to lack of resources. So in Prince George's County, there are resources available. There are resources available in Maryland, but the demand, even now, so how I even met Ms. Stepp, it was someone at a hospital who has they have a domestic violence intervention program. And one of the things that she was telling me is that they're having a hard time right now. She's a case manager and she helps women. They're having a hard time right now finding safe housing for people who want to escape and want to exit, right? So if there are not enough resources, that means it's a lot going on with just the mental and emotional state of people, to the victims, but then also the abusers, to even go to to the extent like that people are really suffering, some in silence. So again, this may be an opportunity to kind of maybe reach out to some of those organizations or those service providers to ask, how can we support, or even if it's just some type of drive or donation, for the resources that they may need. So that's just something to think about. And then again, this shows you the severity of domestic violence. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, some of us may have experienced or maybe in an unhealthy relationship, and not all unhealthy relationships are abusive, but all abusive relationships are unhealthy. Okay? All right, so next slide. What do we know about abusers? And before I continue, are there any questions or comments in the chat box online? No? Yeah. Please. So we have a question or a comment.
Can you just, and maybe I missed it, but can you just give us an example of technology abuse?
Yeah, so with technology, it could be taking a phone away, monitoring phone calls, monitoring computer usage. Some people don't have a phone. Some people, they'll go out. I've read stories of women that they'll get a job at like the dollar store or something, and their husband is a professional, prominent, like for example, this particular story, her husband was an attorney, and she got a second job just so that she can buy a phone. So that way she can be able to use and communicate. So technology, it could be taken away. A phone, computer, or you don't have access to anything, or people, your family members, they can't call you to keep you isolated. Or it could be tracking. It could be GPS, where are you? Just like, our phones, we can now share our location with people like that. Just little things like that. And it may start off, he cares about me, or, he just wants to know where I'm at. So there's certain signs, there's certain red flags that we want to, to look out for as well, okay? So common characteristics of abusers. I'm on the next slide. Abusers often, they deny the existence or minimizes the seriousness of the violence and its effect on the victim and other family members. Abusers, they objectify the victim and often sees them as their property or sexual objects. Like I had to, when it was time for me to, one of the conversations when we went to the whole bank thing, I told him, I was like, you don't own me. Like I don't belong to you. Like you can't control what I do with my life. Again, we're divorced. Even if we weren't divorced, I'm still my own individual person, and it's still a mutual respect. A healthy relationship, I talked about unhealthy, but a healthy relationship, trust, communication, respect. And that wasn't present. Abusers, they often have low self-esteem and feels powerless and ineffective in the world, and he or she may appear successful, but they feel differently internally. The abusers, they internalize the causes of their behavior, and they blame violence or their circumstances on other things, such as stress or your partner's behavior. You made me do it if you didn't do this. And then so now sometimes in the victim's mind or the person experiencing abuse, it's like, well, if I don't say this, if I didn't do this, then he wouldn't do this, They might blame it on alcohol, or, when I grew up, this is what happened to me, and my mother and my father didn't do this, or I experienced this, or I'm just having a hard time at work, and you should understand. It could be a lot of different things, but my point is, they don't take personal responsibility for their actions. And abusers, they may be pleasant and charming between the periods of violence, and is often seen as a nice person to others. Some people may pick up on it and they can see like, oh, this person is being controlling to someone kind of close to you. And this is something that I think if we're looking to recognize certain things, so there's isolation that happens. And so for example, with the woman that I interviewed, Renee Michelle, she said she hadn't seen her family in about a year. And she hadn't had any visitors. And, sometimes we're like, oh, so-and-so met this person. They're acting brand new, or they must be happy and they went on and, they don't need us anymore. We start thinking things, but my thing is have some grace for the person. And even with mental health and self-care, sometimes it's like check on your friend, check on someone, say hello, say hi, ask them how they're doing, just kind of check in if you haven't heard from someone. It's not always that they have moved on. You never know what they're going through. So if you haven't heard from someone that you normally would speak to and they normally would come to family functions or church events and they haven't showed up in a while, maybe a nice check-in just to see how things are going. You may find, it may be something else that they may need support or just words of encouragement or prayer about. It doesn't have to be abuse, but I encourage everyone, if you haven't heard from someone, check on them. But again, they can be nice between those periods as well. So as I mentioned when I opened up, my abuser, he was the nicest person to me and the meanest person to me at the same time. We have a question or comment?
Just a comment. Usually for abusers, reading the slide, you talked about them being very powerful. Sometimes externally they can be powerful, but internally they are fearful. So they mirror that fear on you, and that is a big problem.
Yes, no, I definitely agree. I agree that someone can seem like they're confident and they dress well and in the public, it seems fine. They have the nice position, they have the education, or, they may seem like, or just, they may seem okay, but like you mentioned, I agree. Internally, they feel powerless, ineffective. There are some internal issues. And so again, even when talking to, even Ms. Stepp mentioned this earlier, we have victims, but then you have the abusers, and to what extent you feel comfortable, there may be some type of, support to provide for people who are abusers. It depends on to what extent. Like some stuff is just not acceptable, domestic violence is never acceptable. But with abusers, they have to recognize it for themselves. And they have to want to make a change and seek counseling or therapy or, make changes. But the first thing is they have to acknowledge what it is that they're doing. And that is not right. And not just say it because it's the right thing to say, but it's something internally. And I don't think, me personally, that's not my job to figure it out. With my son's dad, just this year, we had a phone conversation. And he says, you know what, I want our son to see us on the same page, we should just be friends, so that he can see that, we're not against each other or anything like that. And it sounds good, it sounds logical. And so he was like, and besides, you left me, I didn't leave you. There we go. It's just that fast, right? And besides, you left me, I didn't leave you. And he was like, but no, let's talk about it. He was just like, was it that bad? He was like, we never talk about it. And I was like, well, I said, if you were me, you would have left too. As a matter of fact, you probably would have left much sooner. And then that's when he said, oh, is it that bad? Tell me, let's talk about it. I said, well, you hit me while I was pregnant and you made my nose bleed. And he said, I hit you while you was pregnant. It made your nose bleed. This is on the phone. But the gestures that I'm saying, like, that's how it came out. Like, I hit you while you were pregnant. Like, he's questioning, like, me when I made your nose bleed. I was like, yeah, and I had to get the OxyClean and clean it up on the carpet. And then I said, and then I ended the phone conversation, and I ended up texting him. I was like, we are not friends. Like, we will never be friends. And that's when I told myself, I was like, Shanta, you are not going to get closure. Something is wrong with this man. He is sick, and that is not for me to figure out. I wish him the best. I pray that he changes, and I pray that he has a healthier relationship with his children. That is, like, I'm done. Like, you don't even get the chance. You don't get the chance to hear my voice. You don't get the chance to see my pretty face, nothing. We don't get to know. Like, that's when but all of these years, and so it's interesting with the abusers. They know you, and they can bring you back in. And so in the meantime, people are saying, "Oh, he's changed. He's different now, and this and that," and But I'm not the only. And then he told his daughter this year, one of his adult daughters, that he has never put his hand on a woman. And I know for a fact that I'm not the only woman that he's put his hands on. I know for a fact, So anyway, like I said, it's up to you as an individual or as a congregation to, how you want to provide support to abusers, So are there any warning signs? I'm on the next slide. And the answer is yes, there are warning signs. So next slide, abusive behavior warning signs. Telling you that you never do anything right. Showing extreme jealousy of your friends or time spent away. Preventing or discouraging you from spending time with friends, family members, or peers. Insulting, demeaning, or shaming you, especially in front of other people. Preventing you from making your own decisions, including decisions about work and attending school, attending church, different things like that. And so those are warning signs, because someone may be in a situation, and then there is this term called gaslighting. It's just like, I didn't do that. And so you know what you experienced, and you know what you heard, you know what you saw, you know what happened, and that person is literally in front of you saying that didn't happen. That's not what happened. And so now as a sane person, you're like questioning yourself, like, I know I'm not crazy, So just keep in mind, like, psychologically, sometimes, like I like to say positive affirmations, and just like something, the positive affirmations, it feeds your mind, it feeds your spirit, it keeps your cup full, it keeps you going. But think about what the negative affirmations or the negative messages can slowly do to you. If positive affirmations and thinking positive, it can build you up slowly, something else can tear you down too, So just keep that in mind. So again, I try not to be, judgmental. Next slide, additional abusive behavior warning signs. Controlling finances in the household without discussion, including taking your money or refusing to give you money. Pressuring you to have sex or perform sexual acts you're not comfortable with. So the controlling finances, I didn't work the majority of our marriage. The majority of the time that we were together we lived together for 2 years before we got married. We were married 2 years before we had my son, and by the time my son was 2, we were divorced. And I probably worked about a good 9 months during our entire relationship. And so I didn't realize it at the time. I had a guy friend and this is the thing too, I had this guy friend, he was just a guy friend that I would always hang out with, get into this relationship, and now I don't hang out with this person. Not because he's a bad person, but because it's just, even though my ex didn't say, don't hang out with this person, it was just kind of like, you kind of distance yourself. And I remember my friend saying, you know what, you're institutionalized. And I didn't get it at the time. He was like, you're institutionalized. He was kind of saying it as a joke a little bit. He was like, but you're institutionalized. But I didn't realize that I was like being spoon-fed too. Like money, like a kid. But I always maintained my credit, and I had a credit card. So this is a message for anybody who may be in this situation now, or if you want to advise folks, even if you have the credit card going to someone else's house, or but I always just had, even if it's just a $500 credit card, something, right? So I still had that in the event of an emergency. So I would find myself, when I had money, kind of like just saving a couple of dollars, like saving it to put it in my drawer, just, but honestly, I was an adult, and this person was giving me money when he wanted to give me money and how much money he wanted me to have, and just enough money to pay the bills. And then at one point, it was like, I gave you money, what are you doing with the money? And I literally had to write down a list of all the bills, like, I'm paying bills, that's what I'm doing with the money, pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol, intimidating you through threatening looks or actions, insulting your parenting or threatening to harm or take away your children or your pets, intimidating you with weapons and destroying things. So those are all abusive warning signs or things that happen during abuse. And so the next slide, why would someone stay in an abusive relationship? That's a question that that sometimes we ask, why? So reasons why people stay, I'm on the next slide. Fear, number one. I mentioned earlier normalized abuse. They could have witnessed this or experienced this in the past. And so kind of like our bodies, we have our fight or flight, but it's some things in our brain, like something that has happened before where it's not that we're comfortable, it's just that it's a normal. So it's not like a stun to where this is not right, So it could be normalized. They could have shame. And that was a part of, so for me, it was pride, ego, and shame. And first of all, my dad did not come to my wedding. My parents did not want me to marry him. My mother said, if you marry him, it's going to take, that's going to, he has children, it's going to take away from your household. And so I defied all of that, even just dating him in general. So now I want to prove to people at the beginning to kind of prove that it's going to work. And so now he's treating me this type of way. So now, again, the, kind of like the shame and the embarrassment behind it, or kind of, it's not that bad all the time. So you start justifying things. Intimidation. I remember one time he put me in the bathroom. I was on the phone with a friend. He didn't like something I said. He pulled the plug out the wall, took me in the bathroom, and told me he would beat me till I was black and blue. And I remember sitting outside that day for hours in the backyard in Chicago with my son until I felt comfortable that he was gone. He didn't come home that night, but I just remember like little things like that, like the intimidation. Low self-esteem, lack of resources. I remember looking for apartments in Chicago, and I was just like, how could I afford, like if I get a job, I still can't, Chicago at the time, well, the cost of living now has totally changed since the early 2000s. But I remember like thinking to myself, like, how could I afford $1,200 a month? And if I did get a job, I couldn't do this, or I would have to get a studio. Like I was thinking about certain, different points of how I would do it. So lack of resources is why some people stay. Disability, again, immigration status. It could be a cultural context. It could be something that's kind of normalized within communities, cultures, or even religions. People stay for children because they have children and they don't want to take away the child from the mother or father. And I've even heard folks say he was a horrible husband, but he was a great father. But I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah. I mean, I'm okay. I can repeat the question. Go ahead and ask the question.
I remember lifestyle is another reason. And I remember years ago reading an article in Essence magazine about women who live right here in Prince George's County, who had the big homes, the nice cars, the furs. And they told the story. They didn't want to leave their lifestyle. That's why. They knew the pattern. Every month this would happen. Every week there were 3 women. And I always remember that article because then I could understand a little bit better. I'm just saying, for me personally, I was like, wow. And these women, it was a long time ago. I think they were from Mitchellville, and they showed them, the big houses, the coats, and they told their stories. So then I asked myself, what about the women who are not in that lifestyle? And that's what you're telling me now. And I still have struggles with that. But that article, and I always wish I saved that magazine, and it showed, I don't know if you all remember that. You remember that? That was Essence magazine long ago. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Right here in Mitchellville.
So in addition to, so lifestyle, it could be the lack of resources. So it's not necessarily the trips, the cars, and the material things. It could literally be, I don't have any family in this person's mind, whether it's a big house or a small house. It could be if I leave this situation, like I don't know how to take care of myself. You can figure it out. We can grow, we can learn as long as we're on this earth. So at the very beginning of my conversation, I talked about the 8 dimensions of wellness, and I talked about intellectual and occupational. So there's things that we can do. We can volunteer, we can read, we can go back to school, we can take advantage of different job training, free workforce development programs. There's different things. And it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying that it's easy. I've been broke. I've had only $7 in my checking. I've had only $9 in my checking, and that's part of my entrepreneurial journey as well. But so some people stay because of, again, lack of resources, and they could be ashamed and to leave that. And this is their identity. Their identity is Mrs. or their identity is the woman that has this or the housewife or whatever. So psychologically, people are giving up a lot. So it's kind of hard for them to take those steps to leave. Yes.
As a provider, I usually tell whether female or male patients, I said just be very careful about staying because of the children, because right now we get to see adults that one of their childhood traumas are just staying in abusive relationships where they see their parents like maybe fighting or just being in an environment that has really affected them even as an adult. So I say be very careful, about staying because of your children, because it can negatively impact those children even as even when they become adults.
No, I definitely agree that staying in any relationship, whether you're modeling a healthy relationship, an unhealthy or abusive relationship, it impacts children. Think about, as adults, we don't even realize how much we are impacted by our childhood until we become adults. A lot of times. And so now when it comes to dating and marriages and these relationships, the people have so many issues, and it seems like the man is against the woman and this and that, but it all goes back down sometimes to childhood. I mentioned the woman, Renee Michelle. She said that she witnessed her father abuse her mother. And even if the child is not seeing it, let's say, for example, it happens in the bedroom. You don't think that they know the pattern of certain things. Oh, when mommy and daddy or so and so go into the bedroom, this is what happens. And then, if you have physical scars, wounds, or different things, the children are seeing that. And again, this is kind of normalizing. And so you're showing them this is how you treat people or how people can treat you. So you're still modeling, even if you don't have physical scars. They can see your mood. They can see the relationship, the dynamic, the power, the control. All of that still is present, whether they know it or not as children, or whether you know it or not. They're watching that and they're seeing that. And so your children can possibly grow up to just have different emotional issues to where they need therapy. They have a hard time maintaining healthy relationships or trusting others or allowing themselves to give and receive love. It doesn't always have to be that they're going to be abusive, but then your child could be an abuser, or your child can be a person that is being abused, because again, we talked about this earlier, the normalized. And so the reasons why people stay, one reason is because abuse was normalized. And we talked about culture and religion and family, right? And then another reason, finally, why people stay is because of love. Okay. Because the woman or the person who's experiencing abuse could sincerely love the person. But it's, again, what I mentioned, what happened to me this year on that phone conversation. I said it's not my responsibility. Like, I can love people and I can care for them from a distance, and I can still pray for them. I can even forgive them. Forgiving, meaning that I'm not going to let it happen again. I'm not putting myself in that situation, and it was not okay. But I understand who you are and why you may behave that way, and I understand that you have issues, but I'm not going to hold a grudge and let that eat me up and impact my relationships and the things that I have going on in my life and the things I'm trying to move forward, I say all these positive affirmations. I'm out here trying to help people, but I'm bitter. I'm a man-hater, or, so I don't want to be like that. I want to be open to a healthy relationship and meet someone. And so I'm forgiving and I'm letting it go for those reasons, because I don't want it to eat me up inside, and I don't want to have any anger in my heart against anyone, because it takes a lot of energy to be that way. So next slide, do abusers change? Do abusers change? You know what? Based off of, so now I'm gonna put on my professional hat. So based off of research in psychology, the short answer is yes, abusers can change. But the long answer is usually it's not likely. And if a person is going to change, again, they have to do some self-acknowledgement, some self-assessment, and they need therapy to change. And again, it's not your responsibility to help them change or to be there. Your responsibility is to love yourself and take care of yourself, and take care of, if you have children, your family, and to that's not your responsibility. And there are resources. I did not pull any up for the purpose of this conversation, but there are resources online to where you can maybe pull a list of signs. Like if you're questioning yourself, like, is this person really changing or not? There are certain things that you can ask yourself, but you have to be honest with yourself. It's not what you want. You have to really be honest. In this whole thing, we have to be honest with ourselves. And it says things such as, maybe they're not hitting you, but what about that intimidation, that control, that negative talk? Is that still happening? So, it's just like a reality. I think that list is really like a reality check for you. So that's all I have to say about that. Of anyone can change, but people have to want to change, and they have to do the work to change. And it's not your responsibility to, you don't have to, even through their process of trying to change, you don't have to stay there. That is not your responsibility. It's going to hurt you, and you wanted to make it work, and you invested this time, you moved out of state, you came to live with this person, you made a change in your career, you have children with this person, you really love this person, or these are the values that you have been brought up with, and this is what the Bible says about marriage and divorce, and this is what you've been taught in the church, and you don't want to be judged. And sometimes we have to be uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to be comfortable feeling embarrassed, or some people may say things about us. Or may have their opinions or their judgments, but know that that's going to happen really in life with anything that you do. But it's not about other people. And if you're really thinking about what other people are thinking, and if that is going to impact your safety and the well-being of yourself and your children and your family because of your thoughts of external thoughts of what other people have to say, that means that you need to do some, of course, if you're experiencing domestic violence, but just in general, your own self-assessment, your own level of self-awareness, and your own therapy and professional support or self-help, or even just with church, whatever you have to do, because that means that you're being a people pleaser. And whereas, like being a people pleaser, you now that gets you in situations and places where you don't even feel comfortable, where you don't even want to be. Everybody else is fine, but you find yourself in these situations or these relationships. You're not happy, but you're too afraid to step up for yourself and have that confidence. And you may feel uncomfortable, and that person may be upset with you, and they may not like you, and they may say things to you, or they may try and hurt you, they may try and take your money, they may try to sabotage you. Technology abuse as well. I just thought about it. It could be like with images. I have photos of you, I have this, or I have this video, and I'm going to share it. So you don't want it to get out, and so you stay in this. That's a way to control the person too, to keep them in a relationship, right? But we're all human, and we've all have things that we've done or experienced that we're not proud of, or got into a wrong relationship, and it's okay. And you're not the only one that this has happened to. And life goes on. We heal. As long as we're here on this earth, we are able to heal. Just like our bodies, we get a cut, we get a scar, we heal. So again, next slide, leaving an abuser. Again, as I mentioned, leaving an abuser can be the one of the most dangerous times. Next slide. With that said, these are some different tips for leaving an abuser. So first of all, recognizing that something has to change is the first step. Like something has to change. I don't know what. You don't have to have all the answers. And mind you, I just said step. That's it. Just step. That's the first step. Know that you're going to take steps. It's not everything's not going to be at one time happen or be just perfect overnight. It's going to take steps. But the first step is to acknowledge and to recognize that this is something that has to change. I can't keep going through this. I can't keep putting my children or my family through this or myself. And it's recommended that you create a safety plan, because again, it could leaving an abuser could be one of the most dangerous times. And so one resource, if you're looking for resources, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, their website is thehotline.org. And that has like different resources, and even the stuff that we've been talking about today, there's different information and resources. You can always tell a neighbor or a loved one or someone in your church, and they could help you and assist you with leaving an abuser. And if you can find like a semi-safe phone, like if, for example, we talk about the abuse with the phones and technology, but if you have a phone, great. But if not, if you can find some way to get a semi-safe phone, or find a private phone or a safe line, or if you're at church or if you're at work or at your child's school, maybe you can use the phone then. A community phone, or maybe even the internet, the library, that's a resource. But keep in mind when you're on the internet, like your browser history, sometimes our abusers are tech savvy and they can go back and look at your different history. So just keep that in mind when you're browsing the internet. Maybe you can clear it, but it's not necessarily 100% deleted. I don't know. Someone may have their abuser may be an IT professional and it may be a little bit more advanced than the average person. But when you go on most domestic violence websites, pretty much all of them, they have an exit tab. So like if you were on the website searching, you can press that button and it'll go to like CNN or something like that. But again, that history is still there. There's locally, there is the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, and their website is mnadv.org. So again, Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, mnadv.org, and that's if you have a printout, it's already there. And they have, their services include a 24-hour hotline, and access to a shelter and shelter information, access to counseling and advocacy. And if you're calling, it could be confidential. You can remain confidential, or it's even okay to be anonymous and not share your information at all when you're calling to get information. Okay. Next slide, please. And so on the screen, you see a screenshot just so you can know what the website looks like. This is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, the hotline.org that I was telling you about. And they actually have a number that you can call. It's 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 7233. That's 1-800-799-7233. You can chat with someone live on the website, or you can text the word START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. Again, you can text the word START to 88788. So again, this is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And again, this is the website if you're looking for a plan for safety, or if you're looking to identify resources to how you can probably help someone, or maybe have a link. For example, let's say the church wants to have a link on the website to, a list of resources. This is one of the resources. There's also, I mentioned, the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, and they have a link, and this is what the website, that page looks like. They have a link for domestic violence service providers within the state of Maryland. And so those are resources that you can find there. So the next slide, how can Kettering help? How can the Health and Wellness Ministry help? Next slide. So Kettering, you can, of course, promote healthy relationships. So maybe speak out against domestic violence. It could be a part of a sermon. Or healthy relationships. Address behaviors that help or condone violence against women and girls. Promote attitudes that contribute to equality in relationships. You can use holidays and special events such as today to, in different awareness months. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, to raise awareness of domestic violence. You can help victims explore ways to escape a partner's violence and abuse. And you can connect survivors to organizations. And if you feel comfortable, you can always connect abusers as well to organizations or to therapists. Is there anything else that you all can think of that you could do as a health and wellness ministry? Okay. And this is like an open discussion, so I want to, And again, for those of you who are watching online, please do enter your questions and comments in the chat box.
Okay, let me get situated here. Sorry. Okay, my name is Brenda Banks, and I'm a strong advocate of domestic violence. I'm also a volunteer for the Family Justice Center down in Upper Marlboro, if you're aware of that. They have a great opportunity for anyone who's going through domestic violence. They have the resources that you mentioned online, but you can go there. I have some information here if someone wanted to take a look at it, and maybe the Kettering Health and Wellness can also take a look at this too. Also, the AARP, I'm a part of that, of the Health and Wellness for the local group here, and we just did a presentation on our last meeting on health and wellness. There are lots and lots of resources in the Prince George's County that you can reach out to. There's one called Progressive Life Center. There's Picket Fence. If you're not familiar with all those, they're online. But there is help here locally, and to help the church as well. So the Family Justice Center, it's been there since 2017. I was there when they opened up, and I was a volunteer for a couple of years, and then I moved on to other things too, but I'm still a very strong advocate. We just had the Purple Lights ceremony. Were you there, Ms. Jackson?
No, I was not.
The Purple Lights, yeah, that was over at the Prince George's Community College, and everyone was there. So please, this is a solid thing, and it's happening more often than you think, right in your back door. So please be aware. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Hi, I would say also look for like abusive scars, fresh scars and stuff in her face, or if she decides, to start staying away from you, like you said earlier, to check on people and stuff like that.
Yeah, or just pay attention to kind of maybe be aware. Maybe it's some type of training that the Health and Wellness Ministry can go through to help to recognize certain things. So, for example, if someone normally has a fresh face, no makeup, and then all of a sudden they're wearing makeup, or you can kind of visibly see, and it's not a birthmark because you've seen this person, maybe some type of training.
Another way we can help is not just having a program or a sermon, or maybe having a seminar where we invite married couples. Also, maybe having seminars for young adults that are dating, because one thing I usually recommend for those that are dating is, I said, once you recognize any red flag, I said, make sure that red flag is going to remain the same when you get married, or it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. For some people that will think, okay, I think, he will change or she will change. No, it's going to remain the same, which is a red flag for you, which is a red flag for abuse, or it's going to get worse. So I tell them, don't think it's going to change or for the better. It's either going to remain the same or it's going to get worse when you get married. So once you see that red flag and it's a red flag for you, it's time for you to leave that relationship. So.
Right, yeah, just in general with relationships, the person that you decide to marry, do you love and accept that person and the way that person treats you today, not what they could be? Even if, sometimes we think, oh, this person has the potential to do this, and he never reached his full potential, So do you love this person for who they are for right now, not what they could be, not how they could maybe treat you better moving forward, right now, and what are the signs? And I also agree that there could be an opportunity, like for the youth ministry, to have classes on healthy relationships. Again, it could be age appropriate. I mentioned bullying earlier, different conversations. But then also, I think it's important. We preach monogamy. We want healthy relationships, and we want our children to grow up to have families, and they will someday. Their bodies are changing; things are happening to them, and so sometimes people don't even understand what's happening to their body as it transitioned from a child through to an adult. What is puberty, for example, right? And what's an appropriate, so we talked about sexual abuse as well, right? And so what's an appropriate touch? What's certain things, anatomy, just certain things that, it's as humans, this is who we are, this is what we experience. But in some spaces, especially in some faith-based spaces, it's taboo to talk about, but that's not helping this person. We want healthy, whole adults of people of faith that we're grooming so they can stay members of the church, but then and represent the church as well, because this is a product. They're a product of your family and the schools and society and everything too, but also the people that you're grooming, they're a part of product of Kettering as well. Okay. All right. So the next slide. And this is for Kettering. So the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, this is their website, so it's nrcdv.org. So the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, they have various resources and training, facilitation. They have virtual communities. And so you don't have to be the subject matter expert in everything, because, October is always, there's breast cancer awareness, and then there's going to be diabetes, heart health month in February, so there's different topics, so you can't be everything. It's good that the health and wellness ministry, you're bringing awareness to these different topics and bringing in subject matter experts or people with lived experiences. So you don't have to create your own domestic violence program, but that could be one of your charges, right? And so where you're a resource to connect folks to this information. So if nothing else, there may be like a pamphlet, or even if you just print a couple of nice pages of paper and staple them and have them stacked in the office, to where when you need to distribute them, they're available. Those are little things that you can do. You don't have to be the subject matter expert on everything, or be the provider, for example, or create a whole nother organization and that's what you're focusing on. There's different things. So that's one resource. Next slide. There's also the Governor's Office of Community Initiatives. And sometimes they actually offer grants or funding for faith-based organizations. And so I would definitely stay in contact with them. They have a faith-based outreach department, and the person's contact name is at the bottom of the slide. Her email is jennifer.gray, Gray, @maryland.gov. And so if you're interested in some of their initiatives. And then finally, the next slide, and this is also on the governor's website, but the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, they're actually hosting an interfaith Domestic Violence Coalition Conference on Thursday, October 20th. I know it's kind of last minute, but I wanted to, my role is, again, at this point, to provide information and resources. But Thursday, October 20th, they are having a conference, and I believe there is a virtual option as well. And so on that flyer, it has the information on how to register or for more contact information. So they educate clergy regarding the unique dynamics of domestic violence and the impact it has on Marylanders. They share resources and information available within communities and state and local governments, and they provide strategies on how to best engage and approach potentially life-changing conversations with victims and effectively understand and guide victims to a support system. Next slide. So the next thing that I want to say to you is you deserve to be in a healthy relationship. We all deserve to be in a healthy relationship. And so the next slide, love is. And in my book, I actually, in my first book, one of my journal entries, I talk about love. And one of the things that what I write about love, next page, is love is empathy and caring. Love is a verb, an action. How we express love can be influenced by our culture, upbringing, and past experiences. Love motivates people to care for others by trying to prevent or end their suffering, not cause it. Next slide. Love is patient and kind and requires acceptance. Love is not a fixed amount. And love is communicated in different ways, and we have to learn how we communicate our love and how our partner communicates their love, because love has languages. Again, I'm pro healthy relationships, trust, communication, and respect. And final slide, again, I'm Shanta Jackson, and as I mentioned, love does not hurt. And I would like to close out with something that I say to myself on a regular basis. And so I mentioned that I do a workshop on the benefits of gratitude and positive affirmations. And again, someone may be in this room or someone may be watching who is experiencing domestic violence or has experienced it, and you're kind of going through, and there's the ups and downs, the emotional, the roller coasters. You might go on moving, dating, and you might be in a relationship with someone who has a similar personality, or it might remind you of someone, or it might just be, it could be 10 years later, and it could trigger you because you meet someone, different things, and so it brings you back, right? But at the end of the day, one of the things that I write, I like to write positive affirmations to myself, and I like to say that God is with me, always has been, always will be. And I should be proud of myself. Look in the mirror and look what you've done. You are Shanta Jackson. Be proud, smile, and own it. And one of the positive affirmations that I share is, and I would like for everyone to please repeat after me, but I am fully present. I am grateful for another day. I am accepting of myself and others. I deserve happiness. I have the strength and confidence to handle whatever comes my way. Because you have God, that's why. My body knows what to do to heal itself. I honor my body by trusting the signals it sends to me. Money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways. Because if we're talking about these relationships, remember we talked about, finances, and they may not have it. And so one of the things is, instead of you focusing and worrying about, so with positive affirmations, you're not focusing on the current situation or the negative situation. You're focusing on the future and what you want the outcome to be. And so how am I going to figure this out? I don't know how to do this, or I haven't worked in this while, or I have all of these expenses, or I'm used to paying 50 or different things. But you know what? It's going to be okay, because money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways. I give and accept love. I am enough. I am worthy. I am becoming the best version of myself. I am manifesting my dreams into reality. Everyone, thank you for your time. I am Shanta Jackson. You can learn more about me at shantajackson.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Wow. Let's give her another hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Thank you for being transparent and putting your story out there, because some people who are in this domestic violence relationship, they're ashamed. They don't want to talk about it. They stuff it down. They think it's going to go away. And, you know, they're so traumatized by it. But thank you so much for being transparent and helping us and understand domestic violence in a nice way. Are there any further questions for her at all? Any questions in the audience? Any questions on Facebook or live stream? Okay. Is the mic on? Okay. If there's no further questions, then again, there's an evaluation form in your folder. If you could take in your folder, take a minute, fill that out, and put it on the table in the foyer. She has some material in the hallway. Please take a look at some of her material. She will do book signing out there, and Joyce Johnson is going to come forward. It's going to close out in prayer. Yeah, the very.
Ms. Jackson.
No, thank you.
I just, on behalf of Kettering Baptist Church and the Health and Wellness Ministry, we just want to thank you for an awesome presentation. You have truly given us a lot to think about, a lot to have that conversation, have those teachable moments with our friends and our children and grandchildren. So I just want to thank you for all the information that you gave us today. And you truly have given us something to think about. You've given us quite a bit. So on behalf of the Health and Wellness Ministry, thank you for coming and thank you for your presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And this is just a little thank you card.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
So now, we're going to close out, okay? Father, it's in the name of Jesus that we come before you, thanking you, Lord, our Father, which art in heaven. Hallowed be your name. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for Ms. Jackson coming and sharing her story and giving us so much to think about. And Lord, thank you for pricking our hearts to be more concerned with what's going on around us and where we can identify those who are hurting, Lord, and lead them to you and lead them to seek help where we can. So, Father, we just want to thank you for this day. I pray traveling mercies for all those who are in the sanctuary. And I just want to thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Are you going to spend some time about the books?
Yeah, I'm going to go outside, and I'll meet everyone there. I need to take off this mic.